Well, I know you're not getting your Sabres Twitter content today, so hopefully you get all that you're looking for on Connor Clifton and Erik Johnson coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. YouTube, Spotify, the Odyssey app, that's where you got to go to get your Sabres coverage today on Connor Clifton and Erik Johnson, the two big free agent signings that the Sabres have made, at least to this point, as I'm recording about 2 o'clock on Saturday. No other announced signings at the moment. And, of course, they bring back Tyson Jost as well. So we'll talk about it all here on Locked On Sabres. And the reason I say, of course, that you have to get your coverage here, or, you know, the guys that expected Buffalo or maybe the Buffalo News, you got to go to different outlets than Twitter. It's not all compiled in one area because Twitter is basically over now. I don't know what's going to happen to sports Twitter. I think it's effectively going to die. If what's happened is going to continue, Elon Musk announced that it's 600 tweet view limit per day, which is like 5 to 10 minutes worth of tweets. I mean, that's like 5 refreshes. That's not even 10 minutes of Twitter, I don't think. So I'm on Blue Sky now. If you're looking for a new social media platform to talk about this with other Sabre fans, or to talk about football with other Bills fans, or even to just get your news. I use Twitter for that a lot, just to get my sports news and to not make sure I'm not missing anything. And I mean, 600 tweets per day is not going to do that. So I'm on Blue Sky. Blue Sky, I mean, a lot of people must be signing up for it. It's basically old Twitter. Jack Dempsey, former Twitter founder, started it up, and it crashed on Saturday afternoon because so many people were trying to join it. So I don't know. You can follow me there at Sneaky Joe Sports, just at Sneaky Joe if you're looking for a new avenue to get your Sabres coverage. But we got you covered here on Locked On Sabres. So thanks for tuning in on today's show on Free Agency Day. And we've got news, we've got moves, and we've got interesting moves, an interesting volume of moves even for the Sabres at the same position, right shot D. We'll get to that a little bit coming up with Erik Johnson and Connor Clifton. I want to talk Clifton first. Big contract for him, at least comparably to the others. 3-year deal, $3.33 million per year. Erik Johnson comes in to the Sabres on a 1-year deal for just under $4 million. And then a little bit later on, tackle day 2 of the NHL Draft, which we have not done yet. A couple of thoughts I had on what the Sabres did in rounds 2 through 7. Before we do any of that, the Sabres bring back Tyson Jost on a 1-year contract for $2 million. Now, they decided not to bring Jost back in or extend a qualifying offer to him. I believe he was arbitration eligible, so maybe the Sabres just didn't want to go to arbitration with him. But 1 year, $2 million for the 25-year-old forward, who I thought had a pretty solid season for the Sabres. Came in as a waiver claim. Kind of failed with the Colorado Avalanche and then the Minnesota Wild. Goes to the Sabres, 7 goals, 15 assists, 22 points in 59 games played. So gave some pretty good defensive game, especially at 5-on-5. Decent offensive numbers. Played a lot with Casey Middlestat. Played a lot at center. Played a lot of wing. Versatile. I like Jost back, especially with the Jack Quinn injury. I talked about in our last episode. I like the idea of Peyton Krebs moving up the lineup, maybe to the third line, and Middlestat jumps up to the second line. Well, if Krebs is going to jump up, well, they need a new center for Kyle Okposo and Zemgus Girgensons, and I like Tyson Jost just kind of fitting into that role for the Sabres. So I like it. 1 year, $2 million, not a lot of money, not a lot of term, of course, and he's a nice player, not like a core piece or anything, but I think he should help the Sabres a lot in their bottom 6 coming back this season. But the big news of Saturday is the 2 defensemen that the Sabres have signed. And why don't we start with the bigger of the 2 contracts? The Sabres signed Connor Clifton to a 3-year deal worth $3.333 million per year at age 28. Formerly of the Boston Bruins, played 232 games for Boston over the course of 5 years. Last year marked career highs for Clifton in goals with 5, assists with 18, points with 23, and time on ice with 17 minutes and 51 seconds per night. Correction. That's not a career high for him. He did average 18-13 for the Bruins in the 2021 season. So Clifton with the Bruins has been a reliable, solid third pair defenseman. And what is interesting here, in combination with Erik Johnson, who we'll get to in a little bit, I think what the Sabres have done here is they have signed 2 quality third pair defensemen. But are they planning on one of the 2? And Clifton, to me, is the better candidate for this. Are they planning on one of them playing above where they did on their last team on the second pair with Owen Power? And I would think that that's going to be Connor Clifton. The money represents that, right? $3.3 million per year. It's not a super expensive contract, but it is more than what Johnson got at 3.25, and it's term 3 years. And Clifton maybe showed that he's worthy of more minutes in Boston. The Bruins have a deeper blue line than the Sabres do, so maybe a little bit harder for Clifton to get minutes with the Bruins. Maybe he could have played well on a second pair, but just didn't have the opportunity because of all the defensemen that they had. I think that's where the Sabres will start the year, if you had me guess right now. And Clifton, he kind of fits the billing for a lot of what the Sabres would be looking for an Owen Power partner. He is a right shot defenseman. He is a reliable, solid defensive defenseman. Jay Fresh Hockey, One Analytics Twitter site, I saw describe Clifton as a defensive defenseman who contributes some above average puck skill, plays a soft gap against oncoming rushers, but makes up for it by shutting down the slot. Ranks very low in entry denials, but much stronger in entry chance prevention. And you look at, I saw a 2-minute video of his on Twitter, just of his or on Blue Sky, I should say, of his defensive plays last year. He's a big hitter. He likes to throw his body around. He's going to make you pay if you're going to go along the wall, try to go past him. And he's not even that big a defenseman. He's only 5'11", 190, but he throws his body around. He blocks shots. He hits. And I like all of that if it comes with puck skills and if it comes with the mental component of the game. I don't want a guy just to, go out there and hit everything that moves and then not be able to play the game. Clifton gives you a little of all that extra stuff, but he is able to kind of freely move up and down the ice, make smart decisions, good passer. I think he's just a pretty good overall defenseman. Nothing too flashy. What I wonder, though, again, is second pair, third pair, what type of role do they have in store for Clifton? But I like this move a lot. A lot of the analytics guys love this move for the Sabres, so I'm taking some of my cues from them. But just watching him in Boston, you just pick up on how reliable of a defenseman he is. And if they were looking for a Matthias Samuelsson clone to play with Owen Power, well, they did not get a 6'5" giant to play with Owen Power, but they did get a player that I think plays a similar type of style to Matthias Samuelsson. Can do all the transition things that you want from him, but is going to give you that stay-at-home defensive play. And what's the goal here? The goal is to free up Owen Power to play his game, take chances, allow him to control the game more. That's what you're looking for. And Henri Jokiharju wasn't quite doing that. And I think Clifton is a much better idea for a power partner. So I like this move a lot. That is guessing by me, though, that he will be the partner for Owen Power. Maybe it'll be Erik Johnson. We'll get to him. Bigger name, a veteran player, older than Connor Clifton. And maybe he's the guy that's in line. I wouldn't put my money on that, but it's certainly a possibility. Erik Johnson, another free agent signing for the Sabres. We'll tackle what he brings to the table for the Sabres when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are brought to you by AG1. If you can hear, I got all this energy. I'm ready to go. Sabres free agency day. I mean, that's probably a big reason for it, but another reason why is I started my day with AG1. It's the number one most important thing you can do for your health every day. There are a couple of different ways to go about it. I like just throwing a little drop of the vitamin supplement in my water. You never notice it. Or you could do the shakes. The shakes taste great. Sometimes I'll do that a couple times a week. Just throw it in a blender with some ice and some water, and that's all you need. I drink it. You know, it's part of my routine, and it helps me start my day right every day. AG1 replaces your multivitamin, probiotic, and more in one simple drinkable habit. It's science-driven formulation of vitamins, probiotics, and whole food source nutrients. AG1 is raising the standard for quality in the supplement category, helps you build your health and your foundation first. AG1, it is green powder, green juice, green drink. You're even going to give that show a little bit that, hey, I'm eating healthy, I'm drinking healthy. You're walking around with your green shake. It's perfect for you. So check them out, athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Website changed. drinkag1.com/NHL network. drinkag1.com/NHL network, and you'll get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Again, that is drinkag1.com/NHL network. Welcome back to the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. The Sabres making a couple of defensive moves in free agency. Day one of free agency, they signed Connor Clifton to a 3-year, $3.33 million deal. They also, of the Boston Bruins, they also signed Erik Johnson to a 1-year deal worth $3.25 million. Fun fact, Erik Johnson is only one of 4 first overall defensemen in the National Hockey League today. 3 of those players are now on the Sabres. They got to get Aaron Ekblad. To complete the quadrant there. But Rasmus Dahlin was a first overall pick. Owen Power was a first overall pick. Well, back in 2009, Erik Johnson was a first overall pick. 2006. Well, he was a first overall pick. And at this point, 35 years old, veteran player, definitely at the end of his career. Maybe even this is it. Maybe this is the final year of Erik Johnson's career. And you know what? Among first overall picks, certainly not near the top of the list. Closer to a bust even than I would say he is to, a surefire, great generational defenseman. He has not been that in his career, but he has been a good defenseman, good, solid defenseman for 15 years now. He's had a nice career. Won a Stanley Cup a couple of years ago with the Colorado Avalanche. So he's got Stanley Cup experience. He's got overall experience, leadership skills. And I'm sure what you'll hear from Kevyn Adams, or maybe you'll hear this, as a talking point from the media. I'm not sure how much this actually matters, might not. But he knows what it takes to be a number 1 overall pick defenseman in the NHL. Again, I don't really think that matters, but maybe he's a guy that can help out Owen Power in his early stages of his career, dealing with expectations and, things like that. Erik Johnson, the last 13 years with the Colorado Avalanche, and near the end, started to become more of a third pair guy. He had been more of a top 4 defenseman for the first decade of his Avalanche career. The last 2 seasons averages just over 17 minutes a night. So actually about the same to what Connor Clifton did. A third pair defenseman, gets some penalty kill minutes as well. Johnson's been a power play guy, at times in his career. Not so much last year. And actually, you know what? You got to go back. Well, no, power play production even 2 years ago, he had some. But this last year, no offensive production. 0 goals, 8 assists in 63 games played. The year prior, 8 goals, 17 assists for 25 points in 77 games played when the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup. And he had some pretty solid production in the playoffs as well. 5 points, 17 minutes a night in 20 games when the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup in the 2022 season. Last year, that he was really playing sheltered minutes. He barely got 14 minutes a night in the playoffs in the first round for the Avalanche when they played the Kraken this past year. Had a lot of trouble with the Kraken's speed. And at 35 years old, the speed's gone down a little bit. But what I think the Sabres will still be getting with Johnson is a very good transition defenseman. His numbers are still very solid when it comes to the transition game. A good puck carrier, a good passer. And when it comes high danger assists, he's in the 65 percentile. High danger chances, he's in the 73rd percentile for defenseman. Shot contribution, 69th percentile. But offense in general, 34th percentile. Defense, 25th, which is why I think he fits better for the third pair than the second pair. I think what Owen Power needs is a more reliable defensive defenseman like Connor Clifton. Johnson, I think, could be an upgrade on the third pair. The Sabres have a lot of defensemen now, all of a sudden. And Henri Jokiharju, Ilya Lyubushkin, Riley Stillman, all stay-at-home defensemen that are more worried about what they're doing in their own end. Well, I think Johnson can kind of be the guy on the third pair that leads the break, gets the puck through the neutral zone to the forwards, and he can kind of quarterback that third pair. They really didn't have that last year. Dahlin was the quarterback of the first pair. Power was the quarterback of the second pair. And I think what they were trying to do all year was have Jacob Bryson be the quarterback of the third pair, and he just was not solid at it at all. And I think Johnson can be an upgrade in that department on the third pair. So that's where I would have him pegged to play, somewhere between 15 and 18 minutes a night tops for the Sabres in his age 35 season. But again, because of the experience and because of, maybe Granato has a mentality or an idea of playing him with Power. I'm not guessing that's going to happen because I think it's a weirder fit than Connor Clifton is with Owen Power. But you know what? I'm fine with this signing. The Sabres had a lot of cap space to play with, and you want to upgrade your third pair for $3 million on a 1-year deal? Go ahead, do it. And I like bringing in more defensive depth. They really got down to it last year where they had to call up Kel Clegg and play in their top four. They had to call up Jeremy Davies a couple of times. Bryson was playing in the lineup. Their defensive depth, it was not there when Mattias Samuelsson was injured. Well, now, if Mattias Samuelsson were to get injured again, Clifton's in your top four. You could bump Jokiharju up. You could bump Johnson up. You just have more options. And I think Johnson's an upgrade of what the Sabres had last year. So, like the signing, not as much as I like the Clifton signing. What Johnson signing along with Clifton, though, does is it suddenly has the Sabres with a numbers crunch on the blue line. You go Dahlin 1, Samuelsson 2, Power 3, Clifton 4, Johnson 5, and then Jokiharju 6, Lyubushkin 7, Stillman 8. That is 8, and even Bryson 9, if you want it. That's 9 NHL defensemen that the Sabres currently have in the organization. I think Bryson is an easy wave. Send him down to Rochester. Maybe he gets claimed. Maybe he doesn't. I'm not going to lie. I don't really care that much about it because I think he had a chance to prove he's a consistent NHL defenseman last year, and I don't really think he did that. So Bryson, all right, I kind of wipe him away for that. But Stillman, Lyubushkin, and Jokiharju, all three of those guys I think would get claimed pretty easily. So is there a trade coming? Maybe for a goaltender. And to me, the guy you move out is Jokiharju. Jokiharju, I don't love, the numbers aren't great on him. I think he's proven he can't play in the top four on a team. I liked him when he first got here in the Alex Nylander trade. I thought he showed some nice signs of being a top 4 guy, and it just really hasn't materialized. And the Sabres have 1 year to decide whether or not they want to pay Henri Jokiharju. And the reason why he might be the guy I'd look to ship out, I wonder if he could have some value around the league. Is there a GM out there that would say, ooh, first round pick, and he's had some good results in the NHL and only $2.5 million? Yeah, I'll consider him valuable in a deal. Whereas Lyubushkin is just a guy and Stillman is just a guy. I don't think you'd get much for them in a trade. And I like them on the Sabres third pair. They at least give you some physicality and, similar defensive production to what Jokiharju does. So to me, a Jokiharju trade is something that now makes sense to me. But maybe Stillman, maybe Lyubushkin would be a part of that as well. I don't think all 8 of these guys, though, are going to stick. There's no room. There's no room to carry 8 defensemen. And I think any of them will get claimed on waivers. So look out for a trade. I think a trade is maybe even likely for at least 1, if not 2, of those defensemen at the bottom of the lineup. All of them right shots, by the way. Lyubushkin, Stillman, and Jokiharju, all right shot defensemen. So Jokiharju trade. That's where my money would be on at this point in time. All right. That's all we got on free agency right now. I'm going to refresh Twitter right now. I'm not even sure it's going to work. The desktop, I guess, has been working a little bit better than the app. Miles Wood headed to Colorado. Ryan O'Reilly, of course, earlier in the day goes to the Nashville Predators. We'll talk more about that maybe on our next show. There's rumors about Erik Karlsson in Pittsburgh, but yeah, that's pretty much it for free agency. So that'll do it for our free agency coverage on today's show. Stay tuned. Coming back next, we have not yet spoken about the second day of the Sabres draft. I want to do that. A couple of thoughts I had about what they did in rounds 2 through 7, including a local product that the Sabres drafted. That's coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Welcome back to the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. For parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit, ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Talk Connor Clifton and Erik Johnson. 2 free agent ideas or 2 signings the Sabres have made. Let me know what you think on our... Do I say on Twitter? I'll give you a couple now. At Sneaky Joe Sports, at Locked On Sabres on Twitter. On Blue Sky, you can let me know what you think. At Sneaky Joe. Hopefully get some more invite codes because that is invite only at this moment in time. All right, the Sabres in the NHL Draft, day 2, Thursday afternoon, and they made a couple of different signings to different degrees of applause, I would say. Round 2, early on, 39th overall, the Sabres take Anton Wahlberg, a big centerman from Malmö, Sweden. Now, this move, I think, was not... This is the one that didn't get as much applause. I saw a lot of analytics writers and prospect analysts that didn't love this move that much, that maybe he's got defensive center written all over him someday in the NHL, but that he's not maybe the most likely player to reach the NHL. We'll see, but 6'4", bigger center. I saw some Paul Gaustad comparisons for Anton Wahlberg. Kevyn Adams did say this was the player he was trying to trade back into the first round for in the NHL draft. And we know the Sabres are very analytically inclined, so maybe they have a model. I would assume they have models that like this player more than, some of the models that we see just out in the public. So Anton Wahlberg, second-round pick, a defensive centerman. Okay, fine. I usually take any analysis with these prospects with a grain of salt because there is so much projection involved. You never know what these guys are going to become. The Sabres finally address their blue line pipeline with a pick at 45 overall in round 2 and a pick at 86 in round 3. Ryan Johnson, the only real defensive prospect that's projected to make the NHL in the whole organization. Well, here's 2 guys to throw into the pipeline. Maxim Strebak from Sioux Falls of the USHL goes in round 2 at 45 overall. A lot of people liked this pick. Defensive defenseman. It kind of reminds me of what we've heard about Connor Clifton, actually. He's defensive, for sure, not overly big, but good puck skills. He's not just a rock, stay-at-home guy, can't do anything else. Like he could play the game as well. So Maxim Strebak in the second round, and then a Clarence native, Buffalo native, Gavin McCarthy, who played at the Junior Sabres and then with Muskegon of the USHL, goes in round 3 to the Sabres. A lot of people liked this pick. Not even just because he's from Buffalo, but I saw Byron Bader from Hockey Prospecting love this pick for the Sabres, that he has a good chance of becoming an NHL defenseman as well. Like Strebak, defensive guy, hits, block shots, not huge, decent size, and also has good puck skills as well. Gavin McCarthy, who is committed to Boston University, goes in round 3. And then one other pick that I thought was interesting by the Sabres, Scott Ratzlaff from Seattle of the WHL, a goaltender. They add another goalie to the pipeline, into the mix. Goalies are a crapshoot. Sometimes 5th-round picks become great goaltenders. Ryan Miller was a 5th-round pick. Lena Solmark was a 6th-round pick, so you never know. And they only really had one goalie prospect in the system, Topias Leinonen, who was a 2nd-round pick last year, playing over in Finland. He's it. Levi and Luukkonen on the NHL club now. Nobody else really in the organization. So Ratzlaff gets added behind Leinonen in the Sabres pipeline in net. And that's going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Hopefully we have some more moves to talk about. Maybe a trade, this Jokiharju trade idea that I have. Or maybe Brett Pesce is still in the plans to add another defenseman. I don't know how that might work numbers-wise, but you never know. Goalie moves, of course, as well, all on the table. So we'll talk about, hopefully, something like that next time when we join you on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Again, follow me on Blue Sky at Sneaky Joe, and we'll talk to you next time here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day.